Hello, welcome to another episode of the On-Trade Network sessions. My guest today is Head of On-Trade at Vocation, Marc Suffolk. Marc, thanks for joining me.
No, absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you for having me on.
No, it's great. It's great to have some people from all over the industry, and a big fan of what you guys do. So it's really great to get your feedback on how things have gone for you and how you see the future. But if you want to just briefly give a bit of a background, Marc, to yourself and a bit about Vocation, that'd be good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, personally, I've only really ever worked in the pub trade. I started off as soon as I turned 18. I got my first bar job, working for Yates's. Stuck around there for a number of years, doing different roles. Ended up in a management job. Went between Wolverhampton and Cheltenham, Yates's and Hogshead, and then went into working for a hotel chain for Holiday Inn as a services manager, before effectively getting offered a job with Britvic Soft Drinks in sales. So I think you know Joe Bruder, don't you?
I do, yeah. No, Joe.
Yeah. So me and Joe actually had our first ever sales training together. We both came from sort of running a retail side, and then both had our first sales training day at Britvic at the same time. Right. So we've sort of been on this journey together, basically. Must have been nine years ago, something like that now, I think. And since then, I've been to Aspel Cider, where I became a national account manager, Western Cider, where I was field sales manager, and now Vocation.
Some great brands that you've worked in, and
yeah, I've been very fortunate. Yeah,
and I know the pubs that you're talking about as well. And you know, the Hogshead in Wolverhampton's a brilliant pub. So
yeah, absolutely.
No, so Vocation. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, Vocation I think was in quite a blessed place, to be fair, before this whole thing kicked off. We've only been brewing beer at the moment at Vocation for 6 years. When a chap called John Hickling founded the business, bought an old chicken shed up in the hills in Yorkshire, started brewing beer, just him and his dog, and went from strength to strength, really. And I think that the best thing I can say about the business, and the reason back in November when I was approached about it, the reason I was so quick to jump at the opportunity to join it, was because with very little sort of marketing spend and brand awareness, the brand's become the size it has through the quality of the beer. And you know, when you're selling something that you really believe in, you can really get behind, it makes the job quite easy, really, doesn't it?
100%. You know, I won't sort of wax too lyrical about your products, but I remember several years back when the kind of core of your range now hit the supermarkets. I was working for Brains Brewery in Cardiff, and we had a craft range, and we used to do focus sessions on what good looks like, you know, and I took your beers in terms of the branding and the flavour, and said, you know, this is what good looks like, if you want an example. So yeah, big fan. Are we gonna drink one?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pour myself heart and soul, mate, while we're starting. So I believe you've tried heart and soul before, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Yeah, and you know, it's a great beer. It's nice and easy to drink, but it's got lots of flavour as well. So
yeah, it ticks a lot of boxes, doesn't it? You know, it's 4.4% gluten-free session IPA, fruity, easy to drink beer.
So I didn't know it was gluten-free.
Yeah. It is indeed, yeah.
Ah. Not that, you know, not that that's ever.
Not that you're a... No.
So we're coming out of, what is it, third lockdown now. It's been a tough 12 months for people. How have Vocation fared? Well,
I think similar to most brewers that have a similar operation to us, the big issue was cask, obviously. You ended up throwing away a hell of a lot of very good beer during different stages of this whole thing. But as I say, our on-trade business has previously been quite small and quite sort of locally based. So we were one of the lucky ones, I think, in terms of the level of impact that had on the business. The business still obviously had to switch itself around to trading much more online and direct to consumer, which has become such a huge, huge part of craft beer sales over the past 12 months. And we're fortunate that became a big success for us. So, I mean, I think we were quite lucky in comparison to some. I really feel for some of the breweries that really focus themselves on cask and keg production, and it would have been a nightmare to be in that kind of situation. And now here I am now trying to drive cask and keg sales across the country. But it's quite refreshing to see the sort of the bounce back that I've seen and the positivity that we've seen across the industry. It's sort of reminded me the reason I fell in love with the trade all those years ago when I first started pouring pints at Yates's.
Yeah, well, I think you're right, and there's a real positivity in the trade about getting back on track. I guess for you guys as well, because you had such a good reputation in packaged, and then you're going direct to consumer during a lockdown. That's potentially opened up new consumers for you in the on-trade market. When they go back to pubs, your brand will be more recognisable on bar now than it would have been.
Yeah, I think so. I think what it has done is when you're a craft brewery that becomes so aligned with supermarkets, there are the certain sections of sort of craft beer drinkers that start thinking, oh, that's just a supermarket beer, and let's not paying attention to that. What it enabled us to do is really make a song and dance about our specials and our bigger beers. I mean, you've got a can of Zagreb there in front of you that we've just brewed in collaboration with the Garden Brewery at Croatia, a 10% triple IPA, and we've launched. There it is, and we've launched a number of barrel aged stouts this year, including we've just launched a big barrel aged honeycomb imperial stout.
Oh wow!
And what we've been able to do is sort of remind everybody that just because life and death is in Tesco's, we're still making the beer that made us sort of crafty beforehand, and people have started sort of taking us a bit more seriously again, I would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be perfectly honest. I don't kind of hold any truck with that idea that you're either a supermarket beer or you're this or you're that, you're craft or you're traditional. It's something that I had a chat with Sean from Guilo about, is that for me as a drinker who grew up on real ale, who discovered craft beer on cask and then found some great keg beers coming out, and you had all that issue with CAMRA saying, well, it's not it's not ale if it's on keg, if it's on keg and all that kind of stuff. For me, good beer is good beer. Let's stop being snobby about it.
Absolutely.
It's either a good beer or it's a shit beer, and at the end of the day, you guys, so far, touch wood, I haven't found one of yours that I've thought is the latter. So, so long may it continue.
Our kind of mission statement that we use sort of internally as our business is better beer for more people. It's not about speaking to one specific sort of consumer. It's about if someone wants to drink better beer, then find Vocation. You should be able to find it anywhere.
Yeah. And what I found was sort of, when I was pounding the pavements of London as a sales rep when the craft beer kind of thing really exploded, was that having cold keg beers, hop forward keg beers on the bar opened craft up to so many more people. It became more accessible to your lager drinkers who wouldn't have touched a warm brown beer.
Yeah, definitely.
Now there's some great warm brown beers out there.
Absolutely, yes, there is.
but it has made it more accessible. Now, whereas before you'd have your cask range and then a very tight range of standard brands, maybe a premium lager, but you wouldn't have had IPAs and double IPAs and all that kind of stuff on draft in a mainstream pub.
No, you're right.
And you talked about the Hog's Head in Wolverhampton, and it was good cask pub, and some good keg beers. But if we track back 5 or 6 years, those kind of pubs would have been very mainstream. Your Heinekens, your which again are all fine beers, but it really has opened up that craft and cask ale community. So
yeah, I was having a conversation today with a place called 10 Green Bottles in Newcastle under Lyme, a craft beer bar. And one of the things I said to them is I think craft beer has got a lot to thank Brewdog for. As much as they're now sort of, their reputation is currently taking a bashing in a similar way that we talk about the way our beers are widely available, and we have to sort of navigate that. Brewdog have got that same issue, but I think the entire craft beer market has got a lot to thank Brewdog for. In a similar way to my previous positions at Westons and Aspel, we absolutely had a lot to thank Magnus for the over ice phenomenon that happened in sort of like the early 2000s. If that never happened, then brands like Aspel would never have seen the huge growth that they saw between like 2005 and 2012.
Yeah, it's absolute evolution, isn't it? So, you can't, you've got to track back to where the origins started, and Brewdog have done some great things. They're sometimes popular or unpopular. They're a bit of a Marmite brand for some people,
Yeah.
but yeah, they made craft beer accessible. In fact, they probably helped define what craft beer started as in the UK.
Yeah.
And they upset some people along the way, but hey, haven't we all? I think I still keep a bottle of Mr. President, their 9.2% IPA in the fridge for emergencies.
I'll never forget. Probably about 8 years ago, when I was at Aspel, I watched Meantime presenting to, I think it was Young's Pubs in London. And the Meantime head brewer was stood up there talking about craft beer. And someone asked him what defines craft beer. And he said, beer and craft beer are made with the same ingredients. It's just one's got much more Facebook.
It's a really good point, because when I was working for Brains, and I was in London with a really tough sell in some respects. It was a Welsh brewer that was trying to sell craft beer. Now, to be fair to Brains, it was a separate small 15-barrel plant, which is small in comparison to the main plant. 15 barrel, and some people, but it was a small plant where they were trying things with new innovative ways of brewing, with hops and malts that they wouldn't have used in the past. So in essence, it was a craft beer.
Yeah.
But you talk to people and people had their own ideas and definitions of what craft is. And, I remember saying to a guy in London, I'll tell you this story about two guys who wanted to change the face of real ale. So they set up their own brewery. They got some pubs along the way, and then they became one of the biggest in their fields. We're not talking about Brewdog or Tiny Rebel in Cardiff. We're talking about Brains. It's just they did it in 1882.
Yeah.
It's the same story. So it's about having that wider mindset of it all has an evolution. And I love some of the stuff that Brewdog do, and I love the fact that they're always pushing boundaries. Do they always get it right? No, but actually it helps the likes of you and me. It certainly helps the category, doesn't it? So, but yeah. So what's obviously you've probably had quite a bit of dialogue now, you guys, with on-trade customers, with pubs and operators. Has there been any kind of main sort of theme of feedback on what people are looking for, what help they need?
Well, clearly what's been required is outdoor support. I think we've all seen. I think we saw on the On-Trade Network group very early on when you first set it up, how many parasol requests did we see put on there? Has anyone got any parasols? And it was going mad. One of the things we decided to do was to source some outside bars, so we could supply some just sort of like 2-out service bars to people for outdoors. So outdoor bars is certainly what people were looking for, but I think that the issue that everyone's got at the moment, as we saw yesterday, is just purely weather. The positivity's there. The customers certainly want to come back into these pubs. We saw that early on when the weather was nice. There's definitely a desire for people to be back in the pubs. but it's so reliant on the weather.
Yeah.
I think we all saw the outcome of Sasha Lord's court case. I mean, it's a disgrace, isn't it?
It's tragic, when you think, we were talking before we pressed record about the weather yesterday and today, and how unpredictable it is, and it is the nature of the country we live in, that it doesn't matter what time of year you can. One thing you can definitely predict is that it'll be unpredictable. So when you see non-essential retail and people being able to wander around the high street in and out of shops,
yeah,
unchecked, with all the regulations we've got in our industry, to still force people to sit outside in a garden, it feels like a kick. It definitely feels like a kick.
I was in a supermarket on Sunday with my wife. Couldn't move for people. It was absolutely shoulder to shoulder heaving.
Yeah.
Went out for dinner on Saturday night with some friends at a lovely pub called the Bell at Sapperton, just outside Cheltenham. Yeah. And it was full, but it was half empty because of the space that's required. And I'd had to check in to be there, and everything was being sanitized. It just felt I can't see the correlation about how those two things are, one's allowed and one isn't, basically.
No, and I think, look, we're in the situation we're in. It's not going to change now. If anyone was going to make that change, it was Sasha Lord with all the work that he'd done online, and being a real advocate for it. It isn't going to change. We've got a couple of weeks before we can open indoors, but hopefully the science behind it, and hopefully we'll get some answers at some point. And I'd like to think that the on-trade will get some kind of, to be compensated for the fact that they've struggled so much to try and make it work. Whether or not
I think it needs to happen. I think I've also been very, very disappointed at the pace that people have been able to access the support that they're owed. People have been open and trading now for however long, for 2 weeks, and people still aren't getting the grants that they're due, still haven't been paid into their bank. I think something really needs to happen about that, because their businesses are struggling. Yesterday, there was people that would have bought fresh food and beer that they just weren't able to sell.
Yeah.
They had to close and had to send staff home. It's a travesty, and we've worked in this industry for so long now. You're seeing people who have become friends genuinely struggling to sort of keep a roof over their own heads, to keep their business going. It breaks my heart to see it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And you just, there's financial implications, but there's the mental and physical well-being of our friends as well. I'm sure we've got lots of mutual friends in the industry who, through no fault of their own, have found themselves in one of the hardest positions of their professional lives, and it's had an impact on their personal lives, and that absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's hope that we get back to the way it should be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'm sure we will, because the strength of sort of the character of the people that work in the industry, and the reason people work in this industry is because they are people, and that's why we do it. And so it will bounce back, and it will almost certainly bounce back better than ever, because people have had a chance. I was speaking to a guy today who was talking to me about all these creative, amazing ideas he had for ways of improving his business. He said, I would never have even had a chance to think of these ideas if I was still working 60 hours a week in the pub.
Yeah.
So there's people that have used it positively, and the outside space that people now have developed over this period, that they will now have forever, and they'll have the ability to use it for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's great. So it will come back better than ever, and it will come back stronger. And I think that us as sort of brand owners and salespeople, I think there's a big onus on us, particularly the bigger businesses, to ensure that they're treating people properly. I've heard some horror stories about certain wholesale businesses that are claiming money back from people that people were paid pre-pandemic, rather than being flexible and being able to roll deals over. And I think we've got as much responsibility as businesses that were quite easily able to switch the way we did things, to treat people properly and have a bit of compassion for what people are going through.
100%. And I think, working for a drinks brand owner myself, I made sure that all of my customers knew that I was there to support and help throughout, and I'm then ready to help them reopen afterwards. And I just think, okay, yeah, from a selfish perspective, people, those guys will remember the people who help look after them.
Yeah,
but it's also the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
So, essentially that's it. If you like this,
if the right thing to do has a benefit for you long term, that's a good thing. If the right thing to do creates two positives, then that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, what do we? I just heard you open another can. So
this... hop, skip, and juice.
Okay.
Yeah, this is sort of my personal favourite. Big 5.7% juicy tropical pale.
I haven't tried this one yet, so that's
so originally brewed in collaboration with Manchester Marble.
Okay.
I'll show that to everybody. Marble's logo for them all to have a look at.
So a nice hazy pale.
Yep. Juicy, tropical. Again, very easy drinking. Hides its 5.7% very well.
It really does. A bit too well, probably.
Yeah, dangerously well.
How long's that one been out?
It's been a while now. I think they've had that out for about 2 years. Wow. Certainly long before my time.
Well, that's one that I've never tried, and I now feel like I've lost out. That's lovely. So what plans do you guys have for the rest of 2021?
Well, I mean, we've got a bar opening in Manchester on May the 17th. So we've got a bar in Leeds, Vocation & Co in Leeds, Assembly Underground, and we've got Vocation & Co in Hebden Bridge, which is where we're based. And then we've got Manchester opening on the 17th of May.
Nice. Whereabouts?
Barbarello Square. I think it was an old picture and piano site.
Right, okay.
Yeah, quite a big venue.
If it's TMP, it'll be quite big, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the sort of Vocation & Co sort of idea is we have the bar. So in Manchester, I think there's going to be 50 taps on the bar. And then around the outside of the room, there'll be various sort of independent street food vendors who will be serving their food to the people that are in there. And then just like benches all across the middle. That's so great. Very sort of inclusive, collaborative sort of space.
Do you know what sort of capacity you're going to have?
No idea off the top of my head. I mean, I've tried to book a table for the 29th of May for me, a few of the guys that you might know, Chris Moore from Brooklyn Brewery, Neil O'Connell from Head of Steam, Mark Riley from Head of Steam. We're going out 29th of May, and I can't even book a table myself. I thought if anything was guaranteed, that's the table I could guarantee, but it turns out no, I can't.
Well, hopefully we're going to be out and about doing some of these on-trade network sessions where we get people together, and it sounds like that might be a cool place to do
please. I mean, I think you saw, obviously I started that poll, didn't I, when you first set this group up. I think London won, actually. London, and then I think Birmingham was second. I'm sure, but if you want to do one, if you want to move it around, you want to put one in the north, then we'd absolutely love to host it.
Here we are.
I'll try and guarantee you a table.
Yeah. One table, that might be enough. What you reckon?
Yeah.
Well, I've got to say, really nice talking to you, and it's nice to hear your passion for the on-trade. That definitely comes through. Your beers are great, but then we knew that anyway. And I look forward to having an actual physical beer with you out in trade.
Yeah, absolutely. You too, mate. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.